By the dawn of the 19th century, France had been reborn, not as a republic, but as a disciplined, centralized state under one man, Napoleon Bonaparte. The chaos of the revolution had faded. The streets of Paris were calm. The army was loyal, the economy stable, and the people, after years of terror, finally believed in their country again. In just a few years as First Consul, Napoleon had transformed France. He reformed taxation, modernized education, and created the Bank of France, ensuring the government's financial stability. He established the prefecture system, putting local administrators directly under Paris's control. And most famously, he codified the nation's laws into the Napoleonic Code, a civil code that ended feudal privilege, emphasized merit, and became the foundation for modern legal systems across the world. But beneath this order, Napoleon's ambition was growing. He had seized power to save the Republic, or so he claimed. Now, he began to shape something entirely different, an empire of his own design. In 1802, after a string of military victories, Napoleon signed the Concordat with the Catholic Church, ending years of hostility between France and Rome. The Concordat restored the Church's position in French life but made it subordinate to the state. The Pope gained influence, Napoleon gained legitimacy. That same year, he declared himself First Consul for life, a title that shocked many revolutionaries who had once fought against kings. Still, the people approved. A national referendum gave him overwhelming support. To them, Napoleon represented stability, prosperity, and victory. But across Europe, old monarchies trembled. Britain, Austria, and Russia saw a dictator rising under revolutionary disguise. Tensions boiled, and by 1803, war broke out again. This time, Britain led the charge, but Napoleon had no intention of fighting on their terms. He planned an invasion of England, amassing a massive army along the French coast at Boulogne. Thousands of soldiers drilled daily, preparing for a channel crossing. But the Royal Navy, under Admiral Horatio Nelson, ruled the seas. Napoleon's dreams of conquest across the Channel would have to wait. Instead, he turned his gaze inward, toward power itself. In 1804, Napoleon decided that the Republic had run its course. He would give France a crown. Through propaganda, ceremony, and politics, he crafted the image of a new kind of ruler, not a king by birth, but an emperor by merit. In his view, he embodied the revolution's ideals, refined and made strong. On December 2, 1804, inside the Grand Notre Dame Cathedral of Paris, Napoleon crowned himself Emperor of the French. In a moment that stunned Europe, he took the golden laurel crown from Pope Pius VII's hands and placed it on his own head. It was a message to the world: Napoleon owed his throne to no one but himself. France erupted in celebration. The revolution, once born from the fall of monarchy, had created its own emperor. But to Napoleon, this was only the beginning. Now, he needed to secure his empire through conquest, and prove that his new order could outmatch every kingdom in Europe. The Third Coalition soon formed: Britain, Austria, Russia, and Sweden united against him. Napoleon responded with speed and precision. In 1805, he abandoned his invasion of Britain and marched his armies east toward the heart of Europe. In October, at Ulm, he trapped an entire Austrian army without firing a major battle. Weeks later came his greatest victory, Austerlitz, the Battle of the Three Emperors. Facing the combined forces of Austria's Francis I and Russia's Tsar Alexander I, Napoleon executed a perfect trap. He feigned weakness, drew them in, and then shattered their lines with a devastating counterattack. When the smoke cleared, more than 30,000 enemies were dead or captured. Napoleon had defeated two empires in one day. Standing on the frozen battlefield, he told his men, "Soldiers, I am pleased with you. You have justified everything I expected of your courage." Austerlitz was more than a victory, it was proof that Napoleon's genius was unmatched. The Holy Roman Empire, 1,000 years old, collapsed soon after. Europe was being rewritten by a man from Corsica. In 1806, he created the Confederation of the Rhine, a union of German states loyal to France. Then he crushed Prussia at the Battle of Jena Austerlitz, entering Berlin as a conqueror. At every turn, his armies moved with unmatched coordination, guided by his centralized command system and brilliant logistics. Napoleon's dominance seemed unstoppable. From the Atlantic to the Vistula River, nearly all of continental Europe bowed to him. Only Britain remained defiant, its navy untouchable. In 1807, Napoleon turned his armies toward Russia, defeating them at Friedland and forcing Tsar Alexander I into the Treaty of Tilsit. At their meeting on a raft in the middle of the Niemen River, the two emperors divided Europe into spheres of influence. Napoleon stood at the peak of his power, master of Europe, architect of a new order. He reorganized conquered nations, spreading the ideals of the revolution through force. He abolished feudal privileges, introduced legal equality, and modernized administrations. In Germany, Italy, and Poland, new kingdoms were created and ruled by his family. His brothers, sisters, and trusted generals became kings and princes. It was a dynasty built on merit, loyalty, and blood. Back in France, Napoleon transformed Paris into the capital of a global empire. He funded great public works, roads, and monuments. He founded the University of France, a system that trained administrators and officers for his regime. Industry and science thrived under state direction. He rewarded talent, regardless of birth, a principle that won him devotion from many who had once lived under aristocratic rule. But with greatness came obsession. By 1808, Napoleon sought to tighten his control even further. He introduced the Continental System, an economic blockade designed to cut Britain off from European trade. He believed that if he could not defeat Britain's navy, he would destroy its economy. The system, however, proved impossible to enforce. Smuggling thrived. Allied states resented French interference. And when Spain resisted his policies, Napoleon made a fatal choice: he invaded. The Peninsular War would become his empire's bleeding wound, but that is a story for another episode. For now, Napoleon stood unrivaled. In less than a decade, he had risen from general to emperor, from revolutionary soldier to ruler of Europe. He had redefined war, reshaped nations, and turned the chaos of revolution into an era of glory. Yet even as he ruled over kings, Napoleon remained restless. His empire depended on constant victory, constant expansion. Peace was never enough. He once said, "Conquest has made me what I am, and conquest alone can keep me so." As Europe's greatest armies marched beneath his banners, the shadow of overreach began to grow. The emperor who crowned himself in Notre Dame believed his power unshakable. But in the distance, resistance was building, in the mountains of Spain, in the halls of Moscow, and in the hearts of nations that would not stay conquered forever. Napoleon had built an empire from the ruins of revolution. But the same forces that lifted him to glory were already preparing to bring him down.